This is Rawworld, where I tell the stories no one else will. Country of contrasts. Amidst urban prosperity lie forgotten fates. Australia, a country of contrasts, a land of golden beaches, cosmopolitan cities, and breathtaking natural beauty contrasted against thousands who struggle to find a safe place to sleep every night. Homelessness in Australia is a stark, heartbreaking reality that persists in a nation renowned for its prosperity and quality of life. Today, we're diving deep into this paradox to explore the harsh truths behind Australia's homelessness crisis. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to explore more stories from the shadows of society. Australia is often celebrated for its high quality of life, stunning natural landscapes, and stable economy. But beneath this sun-drenched surface lies a grim and growing crisis: homelessness. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, as of the most recent reporting in late 2023, an estimated 137,000 Australians are experiencing homelessness on every night, an increase of nearly 12% since the 2021 census, and a disturbing sign that the crisis is far from under control. That's roughly 1 in every 180 people, a figure that should shake a nation as wealthy and developed as ours. Yet homelessness in Australia defies simple definitions. While the public often pictures someone sleeping in a doorway or on a park bench, this only represents the tip of the iceberg. Over 60% of Australia's homeless population is classified as experiencing hidden homelessness, living in cars, couch surfing, or enduring severely overcrowded and unstable housing arrangements. These individuals remain largely invisible to the system, making them even harder to help. A particularly alarming trend is the dramatic surge in homelessness among women over 50, the fastest growing demographic in this crisis. Many are divorced, widowed, or survivors of domestic violence, with limited retirement savings and a shrinking pool of affordable rentals. A 2023 report by Housing for the Aged Action Group found that over 40% of older single women renting in Australia live in housing stress, and the number at risk of homelessness has doubled in a decade. Equally distressing is the rise of what some call the working homeless. These are Australians who hold full-time jobs, nurses, retail staff, security guards, even teachers, who are sleeping in their cars or temporary shelters because their incomes no longer cover rent in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, where median rents have surged over 20% in the past year alone. Having a job no longer guarantees a roof over your head. How can we talk about prosperity when people contributing to society can't even afford a bed? Moreover, individuals from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds often face systemic barriers, limited access to support services, language difficulties, and discrimination. Many young people aging out of foster care systems are also at extreme risk, often lacking a safety net or the life skills to navigate independent living. Perhaps most disturbing of all is how invisible this issue remains to much of the public. The rough sleepers we see in central business districts are just a sliver of the crisis. The invisible majority, those cycling through short-term rentals, living in garages or staying with friends, are often left out of government statistics, support services, and public conversation. Homelessness in Australia is not just about personal hardship. It's a symptom of structural inequality, of rising rents, stagnant wages, limited social housing, and a fraying safety net. And if these numbers continue to rise, we won't just be talking about a housing crisis, we'll be living in a humanitarian one. Homelessness is prominent in many urban centres across Australia, with certain cities bearing the brunt more than others. Melbourne, renowned for its vibrant culture, sports, and art scene, hides a troubling underside. Central districts like the CBD, Footscray, and Sunshine have seen a sharp rise in homelessness, placing enormous pressure on local services, which remain perpetually overstretched. Sydney, Australia's iconic harbour city, faces similar issues. Areas like Redfern, Central Station, and Parramatta highlight the stark contrast between extreme wealth and dire poverty. Sydney's astronomical housing prices, among the highest globally, further exacerbate the situation. How can a city so rich struggle so profoundly to provide affordable shelter for all its citizens up north? Darwin presents a different picture. With the highest homelessness rate per capita, approximately 564 per 10,000 people, Darwin's crisis disproportionately affects Indigenous Australians. Meanwhile, Brisbane and Perth have witnessed rapid increases following the economic disruptions from COVID-19 combined with rising interest rates and the ongoing housing affordability crisis. Regional towns are not immune to this issue either. Areas that traditionally had lower living costs have started to see spikes in demand for housing, driven by urban dwellers relocating during and after the pandemic. This migration has driven up prices and rents in once affordable communities, pushing longtime residents into housing insecurity. The crisis is no longer confined to metropolitan cities. It's a nationwide concern. Moreover, the decentralization of homelessness means that local councils, many of which lack funding or expertise, are suddenly responsible for tackling issues once seen as big city problems. Services in regional areas are frequently under-resourced, leaving many without access to crisis accommodation or outreach programs. As a result, homelessness becomes more dispersed, more invisible, and even harder to combat with a unified strategy. Australia prides itself on robust social support systems designed to protect its most vulnerable citizens. However, the stark reality is that the existing safety nets are severely strained, and in many instances completely inadequate. The social housing infrastructure, intended as a lifeline for those in desperate need, is vastly insufficient to meet current demands. Waitlists for public housing in states such as Victoria and New South Wales can span years, sometimes even a decade, creating an insurmountable hurdle for families and individuals desperately seeking stability. Government-provided rent assistance payments have consistently failed to keep pace with the rapidly escalating rental market. As rents in major cities like Sydney and Melbourne continue to skyrocket, the gap between rental subsidies and actual housing costs widens dramatically. This gap forces countless Australians into precarious living situations, often having to make impossible choices between paying for housing, food, healthcare, or other essentials. Compounding this crisis is the inadequacy of welfare support payments, such as job seeker and youth allowance, which remain far below the poverty line. These payments barely cover basic survival needs, let alone secure stable housing. During the COVID-19 pandemic, temporary increases in these payments demonstrated how quickly and effectively government intervention could alleviate poverty and housing insecurity. Yet, these measures were short-lived, and subsequent reductions have pushed many back into financial distress. Additionally, the fragmentation and bureaucratic complexity of Australia's social services system further exacerbate the crisis. Vulnerable individuals frequently find themselves caught in a maze of competing agencies, each with different eligibility criteria and lengthy processing times. For someone experiencing homelessness or facing imminent eviction, this lack of coordination is not merely frustrating, it can mean the difference between a stable home and life on the streets. The failure of social safety nets is not just a logistical issue, it is a moral and ethical failure. Australia must reconsider its approach to social support, prioritizing comprehensive reform, increased funding, and streamlined access to ensure that no citizen falls through the cracks into homelessness. Homelessness is far more than an individual misfortune. It's a complex social crisis that reverberates across every layer of a community. It disrupts lives, strains systems, and weakens the very fabric of society. While the most visible aspect of homelessness is people living on the streets, the deeper consequences ripple outward, impacting everyone, not just those without shelter. One of the most significant burdens falls on the healthcare system. Chronic illnesses go untreated, mental health conditions worsen, and addiction remains unmanaged, all because the individuals affected lack access to consistent medical care. In the absence of housing, emergency rooms become default healthcare providers. These are not environments designed for preventive care or long-term treatment, and the costs, both financial and human, are staggering. Studies repeatedly show that providing permanent supportive housing is cheaper in the long run than constantly reacting to crises on the streets. Public safety and quality of life also suffer. As tensions escalate between housed residents and unhoused individuals occupying parks, sidewalks, and transit systems, feelings of fear, frustration, and helplessness grow. Law enforcement officers become first responders to mental health episodes and social distress, roles for which they are rarely fully equipped. This creates a vicious cycle of arrest, release, and return to the streets, helping no one and solving nothing. Children experiencing homelessness face disrupted education, unstable living environments, and an overwhelming sense of insecurity. Without a quiet place to do homework or the basic resources to concentrate on learning, their academic performance often plummets. These setbacks can haunt them for life, leading to a bleak cycle of poverty, reduced job prospects, and continued social exclusion. From an economic perspective, The costs of inaction are immense. Public spending that could be invested in schools, infrastructure, or community services is diverted toward crisis management, ambulance rides, police interventions, temporary shelters, and hospital stays. Local businesses in downtown areas where homelessness is highly visible frequently report a drop in foot traffic and customer confidence, affecting the overall vitality of urban centers. Tourism, too, can take a hit when visitors associate a city with encampments and visible desperation rather than cultural landmarks or welcoming public spaces. More subtly, yet just as powerfully, homelessness undermines the sense of community and shared purpose. As neighborhoods grapple with rising poverty and insufficient solutions, trust in institutions begins to erode. People stop believing that their leaders are capable of creating positive change. Social cohesion weakens. Blame is passed around, often directed toward the unhoused themselves or toward any level of government that seems to be failing. This erosion of trust fractures civic unity and fosters division. Addressing homelessness, then, is not only a moral and humanitarian obligation, it's a matter of strategic foresight. A society that allows massive inequalities to fester is one that risks its democratic values, economic stability, and cultural vibrancy. Investing in solutions to homelessness isn't just about giving people shelter. It's about preserving the health, strength, and soul of the entire community. After all, how can a society truly call itself successful when it leaves so many of its members behind? The primary driver behind homelessness in Australia remains the shortage of affordable housing. Rental costs have surged dramatically, far outpacing wage growth. In fact, between 2022 and 2023 alone, average rents in major cities like Sydney and Melbourne increased by over 20%, while median wages rose by just 2%. This widening gap has pushed countless Australians into housing insecurity, even those with full-time jobs. Domestic violence is another significant and deeply troubling factor contributing to homelessness, with women and children often forced to flee abusive situations with nowhere safe to go. According to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, domestic violence is the leading cause of homelessness for women, accounting for nearly 40% of cases involving women and children seeking crisis accommodation. Mental health crises and substance addiction further exacerbate the issue. Without comprehensive mental health care and addiction support services, individuals struggling with these challenges often cycle in and out of homelessness. The availability and accessibility of adequate support systems remains severely limited, leaving many individuals vulnerable to chronic homelessness. Another often overlooked factor is the absence of sufficient post-incarceration and post-rehabilitation support. Many individuals released from prisons or rehabilitation centers find themselves with minimal assistance or transitional housing options, significantly increasing their likelihood of recidivism into homelessness. According to recent research, approximately half of all prisoners released in Australia face housing instability within their first year of freedom. The plight of Indigenous Australians highlights another critical dimension of this crisis, rooted in systemic inequalities, historical neglect, and ongoing discrimination. Indigenous Australians represent approximately 3% of the overall population, yet account for over 20% of the homeless population nationally. Furthermore, the past few decades have seen policies heavily skewed in favor of property investors and homeowners, often at the expense of renters and lower-income individuals. Generous tax breaks, negative gearing policies, and capital gains tax concessions have encouraged speculative investment in real estate, inflating housing markets and significantly pricing out first-time buyers and lower-income renters. The commodification of housing as a vehicle for investment, rather than a fundamental human right, is a root cause of the ongoing crisis, creating conditions where profit motives override the societal imperative for equitable housing. This environment fosters economic disparities that leave vulnerable populations disproportionately affected and perpetually at risk. The Australian government has responded with ambitious plans, including the 2022-2025 social housing package, aiming to construct 30,000 new social housing units nationwide. Initiatives like the Housing First model, prioritizing housing stability before addressing underlying issues like mental health or addiction, show promise but remain limited in scope. Government funding for organizations such as Launch Housing, Mission Australia, and the Salvation Army helps bridge service gaps. However, critics argue these initiatives lack the comprehensive, sustained investment needed for lasting solutions. Can short-term fixes truly resolve a problem rooted deeply in economic disparity and systemic failures? Despite strong rhetoric, many programs remain underfunded or lack enforcement mechanisms. In some cases, newly built housing sits empty due to bureaucratic red tape or poor policy planning. Moreover, efforts to criminalize rough sleeping in certain jurisdictions contradict the broader public health approach and often worsen outcomes. Without consistent, compassionate leadership across political lines, lasting change will remain elusive. Transparency and accountability are also pressing concerns. How will success be measured? Are governments truly listening to those with lived experience of homelessness, or are policies being crafted in echo chambers? These questions must be addressed if public trust and policy effectiveness are to be restored. Addressing homelessness requires more than temporary measures. It demands bold and systemic change. Expanding social housing and affordable rental stock is imperative. Widespread adoption of the Housing First approach, successful in other countries, must be coupled with comprehensive support services addressing mental health, addiction, and employment needs. Coordination across federal, state, and local governments must improve significantly, emphasizing long-term strategic planning over short-term interventions. Job creation, vocational training, and educational support must become integral to efforts aimed at breaking the homelessness cycle permanently. There is also a need for cultural change, an acknowledgement that housing is a fundamental human right. Media narratives must shift from blaming individuals to questioning the systems that allow inequality to flourish. Communities must be empowered to develop local solutions, incorporating input from people with lived experience of homelessness. What would our cities look like if policy genuinely centered compassion over convenience innovative approaches, such as modular microhousing and community land trusts, show promise and deserve further exploration? Partnerships with the private sector can also help fund and implement scalable solutions, provided they are rooted in public interest, not profit margins. The solutions exist. What's needed now is the will to act. Solving homelessness is not solely the responsibility of policymakers. It's a collective societal effort. Start by educating yourself and others about homelessness realities, dispelling myths, and humanizing those affected. Support credible charities actively working on the ground, advocate for better policies and increased investment in social housing and support services. Above all, extend empathy and dignity toward the homeless community. Remember, homelessness isn't an identity. It's a situation that any of us could face under challenging circumstances. Homelessness is not a side issue. It's a mirror reflecting the cracks in our society. It drains our resources, divides our communities, and challenges our shared humanity. Every tent on the sidewalk is a story of a system that failed. But here's the truth. It's smarter to invest in solutions than to chase symptoms. If we want safer neighborhoods, healthier cities, and a future built on dignity, we can't look away. Because a society that leaves its most vulnerable behind isn't just broken, it's unfinished. And we all deserve better. Stay tuned for more episodes to discover untold stories, haunting hidden corners, and truths that will make you look at the world in a completely different light. Each episode is a journey. Each journey is a reminder that behind the glitz, there are always people silently struggling to survive. If you found this video helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us raise awareness and spread the message of change.